Fantastic. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me here. My name's Debbie Scharf. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Energy Systems Sector at Natural Resources Canada, and I have the pleasure of moderating this panel here this morning. And thank you so much for the Canada Building Trades Unions for hosting this very important conference and for having us here today to talk about a very important topic, which is nuclear energy. I did want to start by acknowledging that I am participating, as we all are, from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people and honor all the Indigenous peoples with a connection to this land. Let me start by just sort of introducing this panel with a few brief remarks. I'm pretty sure everyone wants to hear from these three individuals a bit more than they want from myself, but I do think it's important to situate the discussion we're going to have over the course of the next half an hour. Today, the world's economies are moving at an unprecedented pace as we notify climate change, retool their economies, and seize the net zero industries of tomorrow. At the same time, our closest allies are shifting away their economic dependence from dictatorships to stable, reliable democracies like our own here in Canada. The global convergence of net zero and energy security presents an opportunity for Canada as a major energy producer and a nuclear energy producer. Nuclear power provides affordable, low-carbon energy while contributing to energy security and energy supply being reliable and clean. According to the International Energy Agency, the pathway to net zero by 2050 without nuclear power will be slower, more expensive, and riskier. Here in Canada, our jurisdictions across the country are articulating the role of nuclear and beginning to scope out the magnitude of potential build-outs. Let me give you some examples. Here in Ontario, the IESO is projecting an additional 1,800 megawatts of nuclear needed in the province to meet its targets by 2050. That's more than a doubling of the current capacity. In Alberta, the Oil Sands Pathways Alliance is looking at small modular reactors as a potential solution to their industrial decarbonization goals. As of December 22, X-Energy and the Building Trades of Alberta signed a memorandum of understanding to raise awareness about jobs and opportunities in SMRs and for skilled trade workers. In New Brunswick, where nuclear provides 35% of their current electrical requirements, their 2020 Integrated Resource Plan estimated that future small modular reactor deployments could generate job opportunities in engineering, construction, and operations to the tune of potentially 21,000 direct and indirect jobs in quite a small province. All of this to say is that as Canada transitions to net zero and addresses infrastructure gaps from coast to coast, there is an opportunity for Canada's building trades, notably in the nuclear energy sector. And to seize these opportunities, we not only have to build out those net zero industries, but we have to invest in the workers to make sure they have the skills and training required for those jobs. To this end, I'd be remiss if I didn't make just a short mention that this past February, the federal government did release its interim Sustainable Jobs Plan, which I think everyone should see as highlighting our commitment as a federal government to creating sustainable jobs across the country and in every region of Canada. And just yesterday, with even a number of members of this panel, we had the opportunity to participate in the SMR Action Plan Leadership Table, which is a place where key partners across all sectors come together to talk about SMR deployment and development. So with that context, this morning's panel is going to focus on the opportunities that the transition to net zero presents in the nuclear sector in particular, and how we can work together to advance project deployments and job creation. So with that, I'd like to turn to my three panel members to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into the questions.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Rose. I'm the Vice President of New Nuclear Growth at Ontario Power Generation. At OPG, we've been operating two nuclear plants, essentially Pickering and Darlington, safely for over 50 years. We are currently in the midst of a refurbishment of our Darlington plant on time and on budget. And we are currently, that's providing building jobs for today. We're already doing that with our refurbishment. We're looking at the potential to refurbish our Pickering plant as well. The topic today will be about growth, new nuclear growth within Ontario. OPG is leading the world in the deployment of the first BWRX-300 planned to be deployed in Darlington by 29, and also micro-modular reactor at Chalk River also this decade. So again, we have jobs for today, and we're building jobs for the future to meet this increasing electricity demand. Look forward to the conversation this morning.
Thanks, Gary. Claire, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Claire Harris from New Brunswick Power. I'm a senior advisor. I'm responsible for site selection, site evaluation, environmental assessment, and also inclusion, because we understand that in order to site a reactor, we need to have, really good partnerships with Indigenous partners and all of our First Nations. So I've been with New Brunswick Power for a very long time. I graduated from Power Engineering Technology back in the 80s and joined IBEW right then, and have been with New Brunswick Power ever since. I'm looking forward to this conversation about growth. My first project was at the Beldoon coal-fired generating station when we were building it. And now we're looking at, small modular reactor repowering that Beldoon generating station. So we're working in partnership with two reactor designers, and one is Arc Clean Energy and the other is Moltex Energy. The Arc Clean Energy reactor is a GE Hitachi designed reactor, and we are getting ready to submit our application for a licensed repair site in June of this year, and we expect to be following close behind Ontario with on-the-grid commercial demonstration of an Arc Clean Energy reactor 2030. And these reactors are great for other applications like superheated steam, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. But yes, I'm happy to be here.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Horrobin. I'm Vice President of Business Development at Bruce Power. For those of you who may or may not know about Bruce Power, we provide 30% of Ontario's power. I've been with the company now for many years as well, 20 years. And I know the conversation today is going to be about growth, but I think it's important to recognize, the support that the existing fleet has provided in contributing to our net zero targets already, and the growth that we've seen. So just in the past 20 years that I've been with the company, we've invested about $11 billion at the Bruce site. We're the largest nuclear site in the world. We've increased the capacity from 3,200 megawatts to now 6,550 megawatts over those 20 years. And we're not stopping there. We've recently, we are in the process of refurbishing 2 reactors now. Currently, Unit 6 is well underway. I'll talk about that more shortly. Unit 3 was started in March. And with we've got 4 more to do after that. With those refurbishments, we'll be extending the life of our facility out to 2064. And just thinking about the contribution that your members that make, that the building trades make, it's a very significant contribution. In 2014, I think we had about 800 of the building trades members annually on average across our site. That number's now trebled to around between 2,500 and 2,700 members across the site. And of course, with the MCR, those major component replacement outages that we're working on, you're supporting not just that work, but also the life extension program, and of course our outage program as well. And that's critical, because when we look at the contribution again that makes to our net zero transition, it helped with the retirement of the coal fleet in 2014. And it also contributes to Ontario having one of the cleanest electricity systems in North America, with approximately about 92% of the electricity generated being emission-free. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today. I know it's going to be focused significantly on SMRs, but I think it's important to recognize the contribution the existing fleet is making and the work that you're doing in supporting the developments at the site.
Thanks so much. So with that, let's jump into the conversation. Let me start by saying I think we all know now that our future in Canada in terms of getting to net zero is going to rely heavily on clean electricity, not only to meet our decarbonization goals, but also to be able to attract investment in the new industries that are going to develop over time. So with that, we're going to start with a pretty easy question. I want to hear your perspectives on the role that nuclear energy plays in Canada. We've talked a little bit about it, but maybe in particular considering small modular reactors. And I think, Gary, you might be a good person to start with, given your vantage point at OPG.
Yeah, sure, thank you. So right now, nuclear contributes about 15% of the total energy consumed in Canada, mainly in New Brunswick and Ontario. In Ontario specifically, nuclear contributes 60% of the energy that we consume each and every day. And as Richard said, we closed off 8 gigs of coal between 2004 and 2014, and really on the backs of nuclear for a large part of that. And because of that, we're over 93% clean energy grid in Ontario, and it's starting to attract companies that want to get into electric vehicle batteries, et cetera, because of our clean grid, our starting point. So the nuclear is good right now, is established and providing power to Ontario. But as Debbie alluded to in her opening comments, the Independent Electricity System Operator in Ontario issued a report in December suggesting that under a net zero strategy, the amount of energy consumed in Ontario will more than double, from 44 to over 88 gigs of electricity by 2050. And called out for a significant increase in nuclear. We currently have just under 13 gigawatts of nuclear capacity in Ontario. They're calling out for an additional 18 gigs of nuclear. So that's more than doubling the size of our Pickering, Darlington, and Bruce Power plants. So that is a significant growth opportunity for us in the industry. Why might we be looking at nuclear? Well, we've set in some really good credibility with our refurbishment, our MCR project at Bruce and our refurbishment at Darlington. We've demonstrated that we can deliver large mega projects on time and on budget through planning, really good planning, and meticulous execution. Like, quite frankly, if we didn't execute those projects very well, we may not be offered the opportunity to move forward with new nuclear technologies. So considering that 18 gigs of nuclear in Ontario, we're evaluating how we fulfill that need. We believe that there will be a need for more large nuclear in Ontario, but we also believe that SMRs will play a very strong role in Ontario and also in other provinces that may not have the amount of energy that we need. So when we look at grid scale, we're going to look at large or small modular reactors, such as the BWRX that we're deploying at Darlington this decade. But SMRs play another important role. They play a role in industrial decarbonization, high temperature gas reactors that I know Claire will speak to a little bit later, but also micromodular reactors, small 5 megawatt reactors that can displace diesel in remote communities. We see that as a really great opportunity for helping to decarbonize Indigenous or remote communities or smaller mines, et cetera. And we at OPG are working with, we have a subsidiary called Global First Power, working with a company called Ultra-Safe Nuclear Company to demonstrate this technology by 27 at the Chalk River site. So nuclear is foundationally provided clean energy for decades in Ontario, and as we grow our energy needs in Ontario, we see growth. We also see that growth happening in provinces that traditionally haven't used nuclear. Saskatchewan, for example, has announced that they are following OPG's lead with deploying the same technology. We are in many discussions with industry in Western Canada about the opportunity to help them decarbonize industrial applications through the use of nuclear. Some will contemplate, there's many reports that would support that by 2050, Canada, which is about 13 gigs of nuclear right now, could need about 50 gigawatts of nuclear across Canada. So that's a huge opportunity for this industry. We got to demonstrate that we can do it right, and it's going to take many people in your organizations to make that happen.
Yeah, so, I mean, Gary, you picked up on so many different elements that I want to delve into a little bit more. Claire, I do really want to hear from you that this idea of the range of applications, we often think historically about nuclear as being about electricity production. We know it could be more. From your perspective in New Brunswick and even more broadly across Canada, how do you see SMRs sort of supporting a range of different applications for decarbonization and energy production?
Right, great, thank you. We've been involved with the SMR program for probably five years or so, where we're looking at, what the opportunities are. And really in the beginning, we were thinking grid scale reactors for, to help decarbonize the grid. But as we looked into our designs more closely, and as the world starts to, kind of look at how to decarbonize industry, we realized that the small modular reactors, especially those that provide superheated steam, are great for oil sands decarbonization, hydrogen production, ammonia production. And so that's become just as much of a focus for us in New Brunswick as it is the grid. And so we're looking at grid scale reactors, but at the Baldoon station where I alluded to earlier, we're looking at hydrogen production at that facility. And so we could have the grid scale plus hydrogen production and also additional reactors to feed the grid. And so I think we have to look at all the tools in our toolbox, all the opportunities, and rely on all of you to actually help with strategic partnering, because we're not going to be able to do this, obviously, alone. The utilities and industry are going to need the trades more than ever. I think we all need to find ways to collaborate and you know, understand how we can all build those partnerships together.
Debbie, if I could just make a comment there as well. When we look at the alternative advantages of nuclear as well, you've talked about some of those related to SMR activities as well, but one of the key things that we're very proud of at the Bruce side as well is and OPG is doing the same as well, is the production of medical isotopes. So we've been a long-standing producer of cobalt-60, which is used to sterilize once-off used medical devices. So about 40% of the world's once-used medical devices are sterilized using cobalt-60, and a large portion of that cobalt-60 is produced at the Bruce Power Plant. And then just last year as well, in partnership with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as well as with Isogen, which is a company formed of Kinectrics and Framatome, we put in place a production system for the production of lutetium-177. Lutetium-177 is used in the treatment of prostate cancer as well as brain tumors as well. And so I look around this room, and you know, there's given my age as well, 1 in 9 men are impacted by prostate cancer. And so we have through the work that we're doing with Isogen and our partner in Germany, a company called ITM, they have a very effective treatment for prostate cancer. And through the new production system we put in place, we're able to produce lutetium-177 at a scale never produced elsewhere. It's previously been produced through research reactors, but now we're actually producing lutetium-177 in a commercial reactor. And we can replicate that production system. OPG is doing the same as well with the production of Moly-99 as well. So I think there's another tremendous benefit to society then, as well as, you know, when we look at SMRs, but also through the existing fleet as well, you can see those benefits.
Fantastic. Thanks, Richard. One other thread I wanted to pick up on from some of the concepts Gary introduced was this idea of cost overruns and frankly, an impression out there that the nuclear industry can't deliver projects on time. And at the cost in which we expected. And that's one reason why maybe we shouldn't do this. So I'm wondering, you know, maybe Richard, we can continue with you. How, as a nuclear operator, someone who's also undergoing major refurbishments, and maybe Gary afterwards in terms of the Darlington SMR, how do you manage the risks? How do you think about this issue in a way that can build public confidence that we can deliver these projects in the way that we're intending to?
Sure, and I'll hand over to Gary as well, because he's obviously got some very relevant experience he can talk to as well. But you know, I think for both Bruce Power and for OPG, I think we've had the opportunity to be able to demonstrate that we can execute these large-scale, multi-billion-dollar projects on time and budget. You know, so OPG, you know, more than halfway through their refurbishment program on time, on budget. If I look at our own work, we're executing Unit 6. In fact, this past week, we were pleased to announce that we've hit an important milestone where we've achieved substantial completion of the construction phase of the Unit 6 major component replacement outage. So that's the first of our MCR projects. A very significant milestone for us. We'll be loading fuel this weekend into the reactor and then return that unit to service later this year. That project is on time, on budget. You know, Gary, you spoke to this in one of your early comments where you said, well, that's not achieved without meticulous execution, very, very careful planning. And so if I look at where we've seen strengths, it's strength and depth in the industry. We're able to draw from significant expertise across the industry, across the trades. We're able to benefit from a significant level of experience and shared experience between our organizations as well. And then we've got a world-class supply chain as well that we're also able to draw from. But of course, again, it is about planning. It is about making sure that engineering is complete, that the parts are on site before you actually start the construction process. I know as part of the work that we did, we have a collaboration agreement with OPG where we I think, spent time with subject matter experts across the two companies as well, looking closely at the construction schedule and the execution sequence, challenging ourselves in the way that we were going to execute the project, challenging our readiness, both in terms of materials and also resources, making sure we had the appropriate resources available to execute that work. We've drawn on experience from other industries. If I look at the recruitment of some of our senior leadership as well, it draws on experience from the US, it draws on experience from Europe, not just in the nuclear sector, but also from other capital-intensive industries as well. And then, of course, as we execute those projects as well, we draw on others to provide external oversight of the projects as they're being executed, and a significant level of detailed project reporting as well to make sure that we're able to monitor, keep things on track. And it's through that sort of approach that we're able then to deliver these projects, on time and on schedule. And the more we can do that, the more we can demonstrate and build confidence, it starts to allay then some of those concerns that you highlighted earlier, Debbie.
Gary, is it the same for SMRs, or are you thinking about it a bit differently?
No, we need to take the lessons learned from our refurbishment program and apply it. And maybe just step back for a second. Most mega projects are overspent. I mean, and you don't need to look far. Many nuclear projects are overspent as well. We've been able to buck that trend, so to speak, in Ontario by taking the time to plan, meticulous planning, and meticulous execution. Through planning, we know where we're supposed to be each and every shift, and we understand what are the issues and challenges, and we resolve those and make that happen and get back on plan. But it's a lot of the reasons for success at OPG are we built a full-scale mock-up. We trained workers in that full-scale mock-up before they went into the field. We threw issues at them in the mock-up so that they became proficient, not just knew how to go the exercise, but became proficient in their craft. And by doing successive units, first time of anything is complicated. By doing successive units, we were able to get much better performance unit over unit. So when we shift forward to SMRs, we want to be talking about a fleet of SMRs. We're going to build the first one at Darlington, but then we're going to build 3 more at Darlington, and Saskatchewan's going to build some of these, and we're going to build others throughout Ontario and Canada and internationally. We will become really good at this and be able to move people from SMR project to SMR project to make sure that we become better at, more predictable and reduce the cost and timeline to deploy these reactors over time. So I could talk about this subject all day. It's my passion, but you got to invest a lot in planning space and work with everybody who's on the team and create an environment where everybody's motivated to the same common goal. We called it the one-team approach at the Darlington refurbishment project. It's the integrated project delivery model that we're deploying at our SMR, that everybody's motivated to work together as a single team to achieve success in these projects.
Thanks, Gary. Go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that this is a fleet approach, and these are modular construction, right? So we're thinking more of a new sector, factory-built modules. And so as OPG gets really good and BPower will be leaning in to learn the lessons, and we collaborate very well. And so we're looking for a fleet of fleets. And so it won't be one fleet. When you look at the scale of what we need to do, it won't be one model only, one design only. We'll have fleets of fleets, and we need to all work together to get this right. And we'll be definitely not competing. We'll be collaborating across Canada.
Yeah, I mean, our nuclear supply chain, if you're a valve producer for the nuclear industry, those valves can go to CANDU reactors, BWRX, ARC 100 reactors. The supply chain and the modularity of that supply chain will give us an advantage here in Canada that other jurisdictions don't currently have.
And just on that one as well, I think when you saw that collaboration and the benefits of that collaboration really come to the fore as well when we were conducting the refurbishments, because if you think about both the Bruce Power and the OPG refurbishments are being conducted at the same time, we use largely the same suppliers. And so what's been critical for us is then to be able to coordinate through the respective organizations the deployment of that supply chain in order to make sure we're able to be on time and on budget.
And I would expect the trades would follow. I know my son is working at Bruce Power right now as a welding inspector, and his whole team are from the East Coast. So we want to bring some of those people home to the East Coast, but I think that we'll see that too with the trades.
So that's an excellent segue into one of the next questions that I was thinking about. I think what we've heard throughout this conversation is there's the potential for a whole lot of job creation in this space. And I'm wondering from your perspective, are you worried about the ability to access the quantity of labor that's going to be needed, and how are you thinking about that in the context of the deployments that you're contemplating in the years ahead? Yeah, Claire, yeah, go ahead.
All right. Yes, we're doing a lot of work on pipeline, and understanding what the needs will be. And we're working, really from 2050 back or even beyond and back, because we understand that, some of the training will, be, longer term, and then we'll need experience. So definitely a concern for trades and engineers and technologists and scientists. So we are doing a lot of work on this, but we're going to need to collaborate on what this looks like, because we don't want to get into this competitive approach where we're going to be drawing from the same resources. We want to build up resources, and definitely inclusion is a big part of that. And so, we need more of the 50%. We need more women in this room and in many rooms that we're in. We definitely need to partner more with First Nations and really look at inclusion as the North American competitive advantage. Let's just, really lean into that and get more people in the pipeline.
Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
I heard somebody earlier this week tell me that net zero meant zero jobs. It is not that at all. I mean, net zero is about creating a carbon-free future. If nuclear is a part of that, which we expect it will be, it needs to be in order to get there, nuclear creates a huge amount of jobs in construction, to build these plants and to operate these plants that are going to operate for 60 to 80 years. So these are careers that this industry offers people. And I also have heard about jobs transitioning from traditional oil and gas. We closed 8 gigs of coal in Ontario, and we transitioned a large quantity of resources. Those that were interested in moving, we moved them over to the nuclear industry. I know Richard and I both have stories of people who have left those industries and have created awesome careers in the nuclear workplace. So, one of the things that nuclear brings, it's a very job-intensive enterprise. In Darlington, 93% of our spend is actually in Canada and contributes, in the 30 years that we'll operate Darlington alone, it contributes about $89 billion to the GDP of this country. And that's largely through manufacturing jobs and jobs to do the construction work and the operations of these plants for the length of time that they will operate.
So we've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask this question, and maybe it's going to be a bit more of a rapid-fire answer. So we're in a global race. Canada is not alone in its desires to see nuclear deployments and capitalize on this opportunity. And in light of this, the federal budget just last month introduced a number of measures to help Canada compete. We know there's pressure in particular with the United States and their Inflation Reduction Act. So I guess my question for the panel is, and I'd like to hear all of your views, have we done enough in Canada to create the right competitiveness position to be a real contender in this race, in particular around our relationship with our colleagues down south when it comes to nuclear?
I think that we've certainly stepped up to the plate, and I'm not going to say that we've matched the IRA. the Inflation Reduction Act program in the US, which is funding some clean energy projects at a level about 50%. But quite frankly, we've stepped up. We have a fantastic, I think the federal government, it's not just the funding, it's all the policies and the communication that comes with this that will create a stable environment for us to execute these projects over a long period of time. So it's a great step forward. We want to see continuity of these funding for longer periods. This is not a 10-year exercise. This is a 20, 30-year exercise, but very pleased how we've transitioned over the last little bit. And I would say this, that the US has lots of funding, but we have the first projects. We are going faster than the US right now in deploying the GE BWRX project, and Tennessee Valley Authority in the US is going to follow us, and it is going to create an export market here in Canada to contribute to Canada's GDP. We're also working with a company called Synthos Green Energy in Poland that wants to deploy 79 of this same reactor technology starting in the 30s. We have a group from Estonia called Fermi Energia that is also going to deploy some of these reactors. So it's not just Ontario, Saskatchewan, it's the US, Poland, Estonia, and other countries are lining up. And by us going first, we create intellectual property opportunities and a supply chain and an export market to really contribute to Canada's GDP.
Great. Claire?
Yeah, I was just at Reuters conference for SMRs last week, and I spoke about what we were doing in New Brunswick and in Canada. And the comments I got from the people from the United States is, oh, you're actually doing it. We're talking about what we're going to do, and you're already, getting ready to submit your application for a license, and you've already got license in Ontario. So I think what the United States are looking at is, oh, they're actually doing it, and they're talking about what they're going to do. So let's keep that, momentum, and let's work together to actually keep moving forward. I agree that the federal government seems to have upped their game, and so I'm positive. I'm feeling positive about the future of SMRs.
Go ahead, Richard.
I think there's definitely a lot of positives that we can take from the recent budget, but I do think when we look at the opportunity ahead of us, we also have to look at some of the other barriers that we see, or some of the other hurdles that we have to get through. And so OPG, moving ahead quickly with the first SMR project, and which is tremendous. But they're able to do that because they've already gone through their impact assessment process. Others, Gary, you mentioned earlier on that we're looking to potentially double the nuclear power in Ontario. The challenge for us there is that even for an existing site like the Bruce Power site, our estimate is that an impact assessment to put some additional nuclear generation on that site would take between 6 to 7 years. Well, 6 to 7 years for a site that's the largest site in the world, it's extremely well studied, seems an incredibly long time. And we recognize that there's clearly a need to make sure that you go through the right process and you go through the right consultation with the Indigenous communities. We have a very good relationship with our Indigenous communities. But I think when we're thinking about other things, what other actions can be taken, and we did talk about this yesterday as well, I think it's certainly, we need to make sure that we're looking at streamlining processes where we can, so we can still go through the proper due diligence, but at the same time actually give us the opportunity to realize some of the environmental benefits that we're all trying to achieve.
Great. Fantastic. Okay, we're going to do 30 seconds, final remarks. This is what I want each of you to tackle. What are you most optimistic about, and what are you most worried about? 30 seconds. We're going to start with Richard. We're going to work our way back.
I think most optimistic, I think there's a tremendous opportunity ahead of us. What am I worried about? We just need to get out of our own way so we can actually execute that, and make sure that both from a trades perspective and a supply chain perspective, we provide all the support so that we can actually then implement on that opportunity.
Fantastic. Claire?
I may sound like a broken record, but Canada knows how to collaborate. And, I think we're known for that. When I was in the United States, and they look up to Canada for our ability to work together and collaborate with each other. So I'm optimistic that we can actually, dig in, use our grit, collaborate, and get the first reactors built so that we can actually, market them throughout the world.
Gary, you get the last word.
Yeah, I think that, I think for grid scale, we know how to do this. I think when we're thinking about SMRs and deploying SMRs in industry, cogeneration opportunities with industry or remote communities, that's going to take a lot of engagement and communications and education. That is we need to demonstrate that we can do this decade in the 30s and 40s about really doing this in mass. So I think we have the know-how to do it, but it's going to take education. The one worry I have is about capacity. Nuclear is not the only solution here. Nuclear is one of the solutions in a toolbox of solutions to get to net zero by 2050. All of the solutions are going to require significant amounts of people. I just worry if we're going to have enough people to be able to do it. I think we're going to have to rely on automation and innovation to be a part of that mix, but the human capacity to pull this off, not just nuclear, the whole basket of things that we need to do is going to be a challenge. That worries me every day.
Well, you gave us such an astute and clear-minded ending to this panel, so I will say thank you to all three of you for a very engaging conversation, and thank you all for participating with us in this conversation.